It wasn't that long ago. It was in the fall of 2008 that I got this call from Chris Anderson saying, Sylvia, I have a surprise for you. And I thought, I'm going to be able to give a TED Talk, because I thought, I really have always wanted to give a TED Talk. It's so influential. You reach so many people in a powerful way. But he said, yes, we would like to have you give a TED Talk, but there's more. We want to give you the TED Prize. And the catch here is it has to be a wish big enough to change the world. So a couple of years later, here is Chris Anderson talking about what we did.
We're trying to make a wish come true. A year ago, Sylvia Earle won the TED Prize. She gets granted a wish of any kind.
50 years ago, when I began exploring the ocean, no one imagined that we could do anything to harm the ocean by what we put into it or what we took out of it. It seemed at that time to be a sea of Eden. But now we know, we are now facing paradise lost. With every drop of water you drink, every breath you take, you're connected to the sea, no matter where on Earth you live. Most of the oxygen in the atmosphere is generated by the sea. The ocean drives climate and weather, stabilizes temperature, shapes Earth's chemistry, and provides home for about 97% of life in the world, maybe in the universe. No water, no life.
The oceans issue has to move from being this very niche issue that stirs a small number of people passionately to a broader issue that the world at large gets.
I wish you would use all means at your disposal. Films, expeditions, the web, new submarines, a campaign to ignite public support for a global network of marine protected areas, hope spots, large enough to save and restore the ocean, the blue heart of the planet.
Hundreds of people responded to that wish. They were inspired by her talk. And trying to put the pieces together, we felt that the way to link them and galvanize them was to have this voyage to this place of extreme historical and symbolic interest, the Galapagos.
The Galapagos is a part of the whole eastern tropical Pacific seascape that's bordered on the blue Pacific as a whole, the blue face of the planet. This is one great hope spot. This is the launching of Mission Blue.
Welcome to the Endeavour.
It's just this wonderful mixture of people who together represent a really potent force. And if people so decide that together they really want to tackle this problem seriously, I think it's going to be pretty amazing what could come out of it.
There's a sense of urgency and also a recognition that while it's not good enough for a handful of scientists to understand what's happening, they have to get that information in the minds and hearts of the people who are making decisions, the politicians, the moms and dads, the teachers, the kids, everybody, because we are all in this together. What he did was write a check for $1 million. That made possible that expedition to the Galapagos and the beginning of Mission Blue, which is a mission of collaboration among the many people who are facing up to the issue that our planet, mostly blue, is in trouble. But it's not too late. If you had to choose in time a place to be, choose the 21st century. Never again will we have a better chance to take what we know and move to secure the habitability of Earth. It is on the line. We hear this, but what are we doing about it? Now, starting with about a dozen places that we almost arbitrarily chose, including the Galapagos Islands, as hope spots, obvious places, but now 160 places around the world. People have to make a commitment, champions, communities, to either embrace a place that they know and love with care, if it's in good shape, or to really change the trajectory to get to a better place. This is the reality. Nobody can do everything that is required, not just for the ocean, but for the planet as a whole. But everybody can do something. And there are now 8 billion somebodies who can do something to change this trajectory that we are all experiencing, from decline, more rapid than any time in our history, to recovery and stability. nations are beginning to come together with a framework of hope, but it takes us to take that hope and translate it to action. So the concept of planetary boundaries, Johann Rockström is a rock star in my mind for articulating, along with his team, what are the limits that we must not surpass, whether it's greenhouse gases, use of the land, use of the ocean, the fabric of life itself. There are limits that we're really close to going over the edge, but there's still plenty of reason for hope. I have recently been focusing some of my time and energy in the Galapagos Islands, where Mission Blue got its start. What you're seeing now is the document that was taken underwater by the Minister of the Environment in 2002, where 4 presidents came together to dignify the Eastern Tropical Pacific Seascape Corridor, and Ecuador specifically to expand a marine reserve. So this is Gustavo Manrique.
This is a map where President Lasso signed in his head, right?
Fantastic.
President Duque signed.
Wonderful.
Cortizo and Alvarado compromising themselves to create this whole marine reserve.
So think of it, 97% of the land, 97% of the land in the Galapagos has been protected for a long time. Only 3%, technically 3%, open for human use. Just the reverse was true for the ocean until fairly recently, when it scaled up for just the reverse, when about 3% was highly protected and the rest was open, mostly for fishing, mostly for local fishing, but the market was global. So, with protection in the works, and now banks, the government, scientists, policy experts, and philanthropists coming together to have a big debt for nature swap in the Galapagos that will provide a steady source of revenue to scale up protection for the ocean and for all of this global treasure, the Galapagos Islands. That's really big, but it's not quite big enough. We need to do more everywhere. The idea to listen to the sharks, listen to the turtles, listen to all of the creatures who, if you ask them who owns the sea, after all, we set boundaries that life in the ocean knows nothing about, but we make the rules these days for the ocean, for the planet, for the air, and now we're seeking to make the rules on Moon and Mars and elsewhere. This picture, I don't know whether it had anything to do with Gustavo Manrique's attitude and his enthusiasm for having a marine reserve. I will say that taking him in the water below where he could go as a scuba diver, I think made a change in his appreciation for what's beneath the surface. He was a little apprehensive, but he got into it.
So great.
Especially when we got to the bottom, in the twilight zone, where sunlight meets darkness. And there, one of the local residents came up and paid him a visit.
Oh, right over your head. Oh my God. Oh my God. This just, it didn't happen right now. Unbelievable.
Yes, it did. And imagine if we could take, what do you know, who's making decisions about the ocean or about so much about what we know so little about. We're making decisions on what we know. We need to really account for what we don't know. The magnitude of our ignorance about the natural world is so vast, especially the ocean. The mapping, we're just beginning to make some decent maps of the deep sea. The magnitude of our ignorance about life in the sea, from the microbes, from the archaea and bacteria, right up to whatever. Maybe we should say right down to them. All of them are pieces of this orchestra of life. But in the Galapagos,
The iguanas are protected. The flightless cormorants, you dare not touch them. Sea lions, they go back and forth, but they're protected. All of the life on the land is treated with respect, not so much the ocean. Much of it is still open for fishing. This is true of the world. Well, we have about 15% of the land highly or fully protected, one way or another. In the ocean, despite what you hear, only about 3% of the ocean is really safeguarded for the fish, the squid, the lobsters, all of the creatures that make up the living ocean. The grouper, even the golden groupers in the Galapagos, are fair game. So are the sharks. They're not fully protected except in a few places around the world where respect for them has brought about laws, in such places as Palau, where it is illegal to kill a shark, even throughout their whole exclusive economic zone. That's been on the books for some years. But mostly, sharks are still given lack of respect for who they are, what their place in our world actually is. When we clear cut a forest, we realize there's a carbon cost. We're not really yet accounting for clear cutting the ocean of the carbon units, if you call them that. The fish, the squid, the krill. All we can think of, generally speaking, is how can they be used, mostly sold, looking at life as products. It's true that some people really do rely on ocean wildlife for sustenance. But for most of us, it's a choice. Most of us, without thinking of the consequences, are part of what has caused a drop in sharks by 90% globally, a drop in tunas, swordfish, cod, you name it, squid. They're right on the line. Squid fleets that are out there as we sit here, just mining the ocean of life. Do you think that does not have a consequence to climate? Think about the carbon cycle. You know, we should use our big brains. We've got the evidence. This is just Monterey about a year ago with the squid fleets. You know, it's not a safe place to be a squid, that's for sure. But if you get down there with them, ask, who are you? How do you spend your days and nights? You might not think of them as calamari quite so casually. It's knowing that leads to caring. And yes, sustenance for some needs to be protected, taking wildlife, whether it's bushmeat on the land or bushmeat in the sea. There's a place for some who don't have the choices that the great majority of us do have. With whales, we've turned the corner. When I was a child, whalers were celebrated. And I served on the International Whaling Commission for 4 years, trying to justify maybe there's some other ways that we should think about the value of whales, alive, not just dead. We have really begun to respect the fact that they have language, they have families, they have culture, they have communities, whatever it is that we value about ourselves. We're beginning to see we're not alone. We look elsewhere in the universe for forms of life that we might communicate with, but we've done a very poor job of communicating with other forms of life right here on Earth. Rather, we've carved up much of the land and the sea. Why? Because we see a value in those creatures, a bankable value. But this is a moment in time. We can make this seismic shift in how we look at the living planet. We stopped killing whales commercially, internationally, in time, so that we don't have to just know whales from their remains. And yet, some nations are still taking whales, but by and large, we're seeing a trajectory of change in the right direction. More whales today, more sea turtles too, because we've stopped generally thinking of them as turtle soup and turtle steak, but they're turtles, miracles, creatures that we really need to think of with different values than we once did. We are at a turning point, maybe a tipping point in the right direction. Cause for hope. So, George W. Bush, on his last days of his presidency, signed into law the establishment of the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands as a protected area. It was the biggest protected area on the planet at the time. There you see it, the backbone of this area on the map. But along comes Barack Obama. Look, these two guys did not have a lot in common, but they had a common interest in protecting the planet. And they did so tangibly by bringing together the Papahanaumokuakea Marine Protected Area. There is cause for hope. We need to find the common ground because we all speak ocean. We all need to breathe the air, and we need to think about how did air come to be? How do we get the climate that we've got? It's not just about rocks and water. There's plenty of water elsewhere in the universe, not so much on Mars, but there's some. Rocks, I mean, all the elements of the universe that make up us, that make up tuna, that make up life and all of the rest. Stardust is what Carl Sagan referred to it. We're all stardust. And to protect the living planet is the key to keeping ourselves safe in the universe. And now we're looking at big moves, scaling up 30% of the land, 30% of the ocean. It is not just about percentages. It's about being mindful. We have to take care of what keeps us alive, protecting the ocean, protecting nature, as if our lives depend on it, because they kind of do. Here are some ideas, some things that are coming into place for Antarctica, along with the Arctic. You know, the polar regions have a magnified impact on maintaining a favorable climate for life on Earth as we know it. Until right about now, our time, the 20th century, now into the 21st, no one accessed the waters around Antarctica, except at first the sealers, then the penguin hunters, and then the whalers, and now the krill fishermen are taking. We stopped killing on the land. At the height of the Cold War, nations came together to have the Antarctic Treaty that protects the land, but the ocean is up for grabs. Yes, there are policies. Yes, there are protocols, there are procedures, but we have to hurry. If you think about it, why, with a climate crisis, with carbon as a headline, are we allowing the extraction of so much life out of the sea, think carbon, and subsidizing it, sending fleets to Antarctica, creating markets for krill, allowing these big ships with huge nets to process at sea, turning the waste back into the Antarctic waters and sending the little shrimpy creatures called krill off to markets globally. And now the deep sea. Look, this is the best chance we will ever have. It's going to get harder. We have policies, we have laws, we have habits that were created when Earth was a very different place. I mean, the world I knew as a child no longer exists. Children can say that as well. But the changes that we are about to impose on the systems that maintain planetary stability within a range that's habitable for us, right on the edge of happening, or not. That's the key. Do we really need manganese nodules extracted from the depths of the ocean? And these are living rocks. They're not just dead stones. They form around a shark's tooth or a little bit of something organic. It takes a very long time for them to develop. It takes a very short time to eliminate them as part of the equation, part of the orchestra. And in the process, not only in the deep sea, but in the deep scattering layer, this symphony of life at the edge of light in the twilight zone that is now being targeted for taking. Carbon cycle, climate, food for the great diversity of life in the sea. Why aren't we thinking about that? Is it because most people don't know? Or is it because people know but don't care because we can still breathe? We can still go to markets and restaurants and find octopus, squid, fish that are now like tuna. Their populations are like this, but hey, they're still in the market, so somebody must be looking out for it, right? They started calling me the Sturgeon General when I was at NOAA because I kept saying things like this. And anyway, I loved being at NOAA. I learned so much. And one of the things that I really came to appreciate is the importance of connecting the atmosphere above, the ocean below, everything in between, because it's one interacting biogeochemical miracle. And it's in trouble. Therefore, we're in trouble with increased storms and other factors. And we have a choice. We are doing our utmost to think about how we can terraform Mars. Meanwhile, it seems that we're doing our utmost to Marsiform Earth. What's with this anyway? We know better. Can we do better? The kids seem to be ahead of most of us. They look at the Galapagos and they look at miracles. Not what can we send to market, but to embrace them with care. We are so good at killing things. Imagine if we took the amount of time, energy, and resources that we have assembled to kill nature, to kill one another, and turn it into at least an equal amount to care for one another, for nature, for holding the planet steady. I say, the kids get it. They're celebrating plankton, prochlorococcus. I like to breathe. I hope you do too. Kids, the Hope Spots have been just a great generator and assembling place to get the kids involved. It's really cause for hope. And right here, just offshore from where we are sitting, a couple 100 miles, a little bit north, Cash's Ledge. It's been a great place to go catch lobsters and cod and who knows what. But it's also festooned with one of the greatest kelp forests that still exists in the eastern seaboard of the United States. Kelp around the world is getting some attention. Seagrass meadows, even plankton. You know, we have the best chance right now to get on with it, to recognize the three-dimensional life support system Earth has. It's the ocean. And the kids, they're out there rocking. This is Hong Kong. This is wildlife trade capital of the world. They love sharks. Their parents may be dining on shark fin soup. Wildlife trade is rampant for creatures above and below the ocean. The kids, I count on them. They're cleaning up our mess. They're cleaning up our trash. Some of the grown-ups around them are also coming on board. And this is just a final thought. This turtle lived in the Galapagos. I hope she's still there. It's a little green turtle, but she managed to get wrapped up in a fishing float. Another little turtle that I met earlier this week, just this past week, in Spain, a loggerhead turtle, similarly got wrapped up in fishing gear. Unfortunately, she lost one of her big powerhouse flippers, and veterinarians at the Oceanographic Aquarium in Valencia took her in and gave her a jump start to go back into the sea. Really reason for hope. You'll see, as she was launched back into the ocean, she had a little tracking device on her. She was -1 flipper, but she had this strong will to live. I see this planet, we've lost a lot. Millions of species are already gone on our watch. That is, we now and our recent predecessors, we've been really good at eliminating so much of life on Earth. But we're still out there, Flipper's gone, we're carrying this weight on our backs, but stand by. This is a symbol of hope for the ocean. Throughout all of our history as humans, we have taken from the sea. This is an example of giving back. Turtles have been in the sea before there were dinosaurs. Hundreds of millions of years they have been here, and they will still be here if we take care. We could lose them or save them. It's really up to us. Hope for the ocean means hope for us, too. 2 days later, she was 100 kilometers in a straight line, never looking back, offshore. Reason for hope. Thank you.